G'day everybody, to Ordinary Cops again. Schultzy, how you going, mate?
Yeah, mate, going well. Busy as always, but that just seems to be our life these days.
Yep.
No, mate, it's starting to warm up a little bit here in Brisbane, but yeah, it's pretty good weather. But mate, we're not here to talk about the weather, and I have to sacrifice myself for a carton as well, and I will apologise to Big Camo and particularly Sally. So, for anybody listening, I did mention that I caught up with Big Camo a couple of weeks ago at the Breakfast Creek Hotel. Um, for the pub that had no wood beer. So that's it was a bit of a contentious issue that night. However, I've got to give a shout out to Sally. Sally served us all night. I mean, we were well behaved. We were
Oh,
well
bullshit.
behaved.
Don't bullshit.
However, mate, we had a great night. It was good catching up with Big Camo, just talking crap and mate, the Breakfast Creek Hotel. Big shout out to them. They're absolutely outstanding, and Sally for putting up with us and looking after us. So yeah, no, she was outstanding, and had some great conversations with her. And I told her the name of the podcast, and I said I'll give you a shout out. So I was supposed to do that 2 weeks ago. I do apologise, and I will pay a carton in relation to that.
Bloody oath. Good stuff.
Yeah.
What else you got, mate?
Well, mate, we've got a few things on tonight. We're going to have a chat basically about one of the investigations that you did. But first of all, mate, do you want to give a shout out to you? Was it kindergarten?
Yeah, kindergarten. You just said, do you know a girl called Sarah Lindenberg? School? Mate, that's pronounced Sarah Lindenberg. And yeah, I do. I went to kindergarten with her in about 1986, 1987 in St. George. And we sort of knew each other on and off through school, like from memory. I think we ran into each other in Toowoomba. But, social media or friends with people like that. But yeah, what'd she say, mate? What was the shout?
Well, mate, give us 2 seconds. Sorry, I was looking up something else. But, mate, yeah, so basically she said it's been a long time since she saw you, which that would be quite a while, a number of decades, I believe.
Well, we're in kindy 40 years ago. So.
And she also said, like, she must have this great opinion of you because she said, "Hello, Schultzy, given you're mates with Damo, I'm sure you're a top bloke." So, well, obviously
Just
she hasn't
tolerant,
heard
mate.
any of the
Just
hasn't heard any of the rumours about me. Mate, one of the ones she said, yeah, love listening to it, and she spoke about what we spoke about last week in relation to the police finding that sex doll in the suitcase. And mate, and I believe you've got a good one, but
Yeah.
she said, just wondering if you guys have any funny stories where police have spoken to the media and then had to come back and rectify when the circumstances have taken significant but hilarious turn.
So almost. I mean, the only thing was here that the particular police officer happened to be the commissioner of police in the Northern Territory, and I don't remember the year, and I wasn't involved in the job. It was a major crime investigation. Would have been around. It was the 2015. I don't know, the 20 teens anyway. There was a significant domestic violence homicide that occurred in the NT, and the investigation was very similar methodology to how the Queensland Police solved Daniel Morecambe's murder. So it was a bit of a Mr. Big sort of thing. That's public information. Anyway, they had very good information as to where the woman's body was, and they'd set up a crime scene and they'd brought in a contract excavator operator to dig up the remains. And before that even started digging, the commissioner went public and told everybody that they're about to find the remains of such and such. And I have it on good information that the investigators involved were gobsmacked in the fact that a bird in the hand, we don't talk about birds we haven't got in our hand yet. And so we have good information that we have a crime scene and we believe this may be the burial location of this particular deceased person. However, we haven't found her yet, so just cool your jets, boss. Anyway, only that it happened to be that the investigation had been carried out quite well, and yes, they did find her body, but I mean, you don't talk about a body that's under the ground before you've dug it up. So
No.
they did locate her deceased, but yeah, it was. I was gobsmacked when I heard that. So the commissioner of police came out and made a public announcement to the media. They called a press conference. And so I would wait and go, "Yep, we have found a body." Okay, no worries. It should be police have set up a crime scene in relation to an ongoing investigation. It may affect this area, and the public is asked to remain clear of the area and comply with instructions, basically. And then once you've got the body out, say police have made a major find in relation to blah, 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 blah. However, we still cannot confirm as DNA testing will take place. And then when you've got DNA confirmation, sure, come out there and pour champagne on your head. But until then, don't call it. It reminds me of those YouTube videos where people have on like triathlons and stuff are coming up to the finish line and they haven't quite finished yet and they're celebrating. And then someone overtakes them and wins. Look, don't do it to yourself. Get the job done first, and then tell the media. You know. Anyway, that was so. Yeah, it wasn't a case of embarrassed. It was a case of, geez, lucky we actually found her, and here she is, because that would have been extremely embarrassing. But yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely put the cart before. Or he definitely put the cart before the horse that time.
Well, mate, that's a pardonable offence.
I think so. I don't think you'll pay it.
Yeah. No, I doubt it, actually.
Yeah. That was former Commissioner John McRoberts. Yeah, couldn't believe it.
Later arrested and jailed.
Yeah, 12 months imprisonment for pervert the course of justice.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, yeah, so that was... and look, I want to reiterate, that suitcase, I've read some stupid stuff in there. I want to reiterate that those police did the right thing. They would have gone,
Yep.
That looks like a human body. Stop, lock down the crime scene, bring in forensics. Probably a little bit premature to go announcing what you found, but as far as the police on the ground, you know, not that we give a shit, but some of the comments were, "Oh, how stupid!" It's like, had they dug through the body and gone, it's only or opened what they thought was a body and then found a real body, they've just contaminated a crime scene. So they did the right thing. They 100% did the right thing. I don't think they probably should have gone to the media as early as they did. They said, there's an ongoing investigation. Don't give information away. Just once you've got information, release that. But there is a significant investigation underway. Police have set up a major crime scene. You just leave it at that. So, understating things is always better. And then once you know everything, you can tell them what you know. So, yeah.
That's right. It's actually interesting. I used to speak to ABC radio at least once a month when I was out at Ramagini. It was all about bush policing and all that sort of thing. So they used to call me up. And the commissioner used to listen to it, but it was live. So there was no retracting anything he ever said. Luckily, I managed to... They did try and throw a few curveballs at me from time to time, but, you know, I mean, the simple thing is I don't have any information on that. Yeah. And I'm not prepared to talk about it. So... It's
and then you can humanise that. Like, you can humanise it and go, look, that's an operational matter. It's potentially an ongoing investigation. It'd be ridiculous for me to comment on that. And just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And humanise and go, come on, you guys know I can't talk about that. I don't know anything. And more to the point, there's an ongoing investigation. I'm not going to do anything that will jeopardise an ongoing investigation. So, you know, This is not rocket science, kids. It's not rocket science.
That's right. That's exactly right. And look, there's a bit of a trick to talking to the media. And for the guys just getting into the police, you won't be in a position to, but later on you probably will. And a lot of the time, the police, especially when you do your detectives, they'll train you how to talk to the media, and they'll actually do. They'll test you on it and all that sort of stuff. So, look, it is very handy. I was speaking to them before. No, it was actually after I did my detective. So, but the thing is, hold them at arm's length and never give anything away that you wouldn't give to an ordinary person.
No.
Because there's confidentiality. You've got to keep things secret. And if you don't know, you don't know. It's a bit like giving evidence in court, mate. Don't say shit you don't know about.
No, well, just be honest. I don't know is a perfectly legitimate answer. If you go the whole time and say, I don't know, I have no idea, I don't know, they'll go, well, you don't know much, Constable. And it's like, correct, I don't know. What was your job? Well, I was standing on the outer cordon. I saw a lot of darkness. I picked my nose once. I had a cup of coffee delivered at this hour. I don't know. What happened inside the cordon? I don't know. I have no idea. No idea. And that's a legitimate answer. I have no idea what
Yeah.
they were doing. I heard noise. I heard people tell me about the noise. I heard general voices in the direction of that. What were they saying? I don't know. Why were they
Yeah.
saying it? I don't know.
Uh,
What do you want from me? Yeah, yeah,
Mate, sorry, mate. You just actually brought up a memory, and this is why we actually like talking like this, because you do spark memories up from
yeah.
time to time. And I just moved out to Borroloola and taken over prosecuting out there. And I'll give a shout out to Elizabeth Morris. She was the judge out there at the time. Absolutely outstanding judge. I couldn't say a bad word about her. She was exceptional, and had a sense of humour as well. Anyway, I was out there, and I basically, as a lot of the time you get thrown in, and I was only just new to Borroloola. I think it was in the first 2 weeks. Here I am doing cases that I really didn't have any information on, apart from the files in front of me. But when you think about it, a lot of the time you got 80 files in front of you, and you don't have time to look through them all. It's charge and bail and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, they're talking about somebody that couldn't make it to court and all this sort of stuff. And the magistrates go, well, they've been served with a summons, so they must come, blah, blah, blah. She said, Sergeant, she goes, how far away is this community? I don't know, Your Honour. and then a bit later on, she's asked me another question. I've got no idea, Your Honour. And then she's turned around and she goes, you don't know a lot, do you, Sergeant? No, Your Honour.
What are you doing there, Your Honour? Nothing.
Yeah.
I do what I'm told. Oh, well, that makes sense for you because your last name's Schultz. So, Sergeant Schultz, I know nothing.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, too good.
But oh yeah, mate, it was absolutely funny. But a top magistrate or judge, they were called back then. They went from magistrates to judge. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, local judge, yeah.
But yeah, yeah, absolutely exceptional. And by the time I'd finished my stint at Borroloola, I knew every community, every street,
Yeah, of course.
just about every offender that had been through. So it's just one of those learning curves. But yeah, look, everybody looks at judges and they sit there and they've got their comments on them, but they're people behind the scene as well. And every now and again, you get to have a chat to them and understand where they're coming from as well.
Yeah.
And I found her very, very genuine and definitely had a sense of humour.
Yeah.
Which was great. Which was said, not in court. In court, they're professional, but afterwards you can have a bit of a yarn with them and just she was outstanding. There's a few others I'll mention in future podcasts, but one of the things I enjoyed about prosecuting was you did get to interact with the judges quite a bit, which was always good. Mate, before we actually move on, I have got another shout out to Jacob. So I met Jacob at the Breakfast Creek Hotel and got his number, and I really liked his mannerism, the way he spoke about stuff. I had a great conversation with him, and I thought he would be very good as a police officer. Anyway, so I spoke to him and told him about it and all that. And he actually said, "Oh, I've got interest and all this sort of thing." I said, "Well, mate, if you've got any questions, here's my number." And he got a contact. He's started listening to the podcast and loves it. So, we need to start actually getting commission for everybody we get to join the police.
I reckon we should hit up. We should hit up all the Australian police jurisdictions and Isuzu because we're owed commission.
Yeah.
For all of them. We've recruited God knows how many coppers now, and I've sold about 11 MUXs and DMAXs by just telling people how good they are. So I want some commission. Man's got to eat.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. No, we don't get paid for this, folks. It's all good. So, that's really good. Good to know, and good to get good people into policing.
Oh, definitely, mate. Yeah, and because you just pick up their mannerism and how they talk, and especially when they've had a few beers, if they're still, reasonable and the way they talk and they're sensible, you sit there and go, "Yep, you've got a good mind."
Yeah.
To actually deal with it, you've got a good moral compass, which is extremely important in the police. And mate, we should give a shout out to Max, who's now the Queensland Police. And I believe that the 4 young men that actually came to our live show are now have joined the police.
Yeah, that's great.
So
Excellent.
Yeah,
That's awesome. So I like to think we had a bit of positive influence there, and so how good? I'm really happy with that. Yeah,
yeah,
excellent.
definitely.
And good
So,
luck. Get into it.
yeah, definitely,
Mm.
definitely. Mate, I think what we do now is we move on to. So, you were part of. Well, I always call it the contract killing in Katherine. You
Mm.
don't get to deal with a lot of them as police officers. I never dealt with it. I mean, especially in the territory, it was basically unheard of. I imagine, mate. I actually can't think of a case where somebody actually got paid apart from the one you were involved
There
in.
wasn't. It was the first ever contract killing in the Northern Territory. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
So,
That's known about. That's Yeah,
yep.
yep.
Yeah, so I wasn't part of this, but obviously we've sat down and had a yarn about it and this, that, and the other.
Mm.
But mate, I thought it's probably it'd be a good point to talk on. There's been a book released from one of the offenders
Yep.
in relation to who did go to jail, and I thought it would be good to get. I mean, you were one of the lead investigators, so I think it would be important to get your side of it and your thoughts in relation to, and for anybody listening that wants to join the police, it gives you insight into what you look for and how you went about your job. So, mate, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah. So Operation Nina was that. It was the investigation into the murder of Ray Niceforo, who was a Katherine local, and four people ended up going to jail for it, being his former de facto partner Bronwyn Buttery, who wasn't actually guilty of the murder itself, was but I can't remember exactly what she's convicted for. She did, she was sentenced to 8 years imprisonment for a number of her involvements with that. Her son Chris Malishko was found guilty of murder. Another young man by the name of Darren Halfpenny was found guilty of murder, and Zach Greve was found guilty of murder. So Zach Greve was the subject of that book, The Man Who Wasn't There, by Dan Box. And I actually arrested him. I'm named in that book as the arresting officer, and they quoted some of my recordings basically where I arrested him. So what had happened there was Ray Niceforo and Bronwyn Buttery had been in a relationship, and Ray had been making threats. It's all public information. Basically, to the point where Bronwyn Buttery has basically organised for her son to get some mates together and kill Ray Niceforo. So she paid them an amount of money. It was pretty trivial for what they had to do, and it was ridiculous because it was. We're going to give you half now, half later. It was just ridiculous. It was like a Hollywood drama, which is just stupid because these kids had no idea. Anyway, the way it started was it was my birthday in 2011. And I think I've mentioned this before. We were at work and we said, right, we'll knock off. We'd been working a lot and we were going to knock off at midday roughly and go and have lunch and have a few beers for my birthday. Anyway, before we did that, our drug team had a bit of a warrant, and so we'd gone along to help that, just helped out with getting some drug stuff, and then that was basically wrapping up. While we were at that, my sergeant Andy Bedwell, who we've had on the podcast, he got a phone call. Oh, we've got a body, and a body's that's a common thing. A body's a body. Anyway, he rings me from the scene. He goes, "Oh, mate, I'm sorry, but your birthday's cancelled." He goes, this body's got bullet holes in the back of its head. And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, because I know that it job's on. Like, okay, pretty obvious. It turned out they weren't bullet holes, but anyway, that was the kickoff of the body. So he was found on Gorge Road, which is the road that leads from Katherine out to Katherine Gorge, off to the side of the road in a bit of a hard stand where a grader driver. He'd pulled up in the area, smelt just rotten death, and gone to have a look at a rolled up. There was a big mat rolled up on the ground, and he had a look inside it and saw a dead human, a decomposed dead body. So anyway, he quickly rang police, and anyway, that's where the investigation kicked off. Now, for a day or two, we were just identifying the body. Right, it's Ray Niceforo. We then got that night. Actually, we got a secondary crime scene at his place. And when we turned up there, we found an enormous amount of blood at the back door. And inside the house, there was a lot of blood on the floor inside his place. So we worked out that where the body had been taken is where he was dumped, which was just amateur. they'd driven out Gorge Road and just dragged him 30 metres off the road and put him in a culvert next to a hard stand where he was always going to be found. And you could see the drag mark. You could see that where all the grass was shoved to the ground where they dragged him through the bush, or dragged him down the hill. There was no bush, just dragged through the grass. Anyway, we were going around, right, who would have a motivation to kill this bloke and all the rest of it. We then started putting two and two together, and we started interviewing not just Bronwyn. So we were interviewing her, going, what do you know about this sort of thing? And she was all right. And then we sort of moved on to her son and his associates and people he hung around with, and they were what I would describe as just losers. Like, they were losers. They really were. They were young men, 18, 19, 20-ish years old. They basically sat around. They were employed in trivial jobs, and not knocking their employment, but they were just employed trivially around the place. I think some were unemployed. They basically did no physical exercise. They watched movies, they played video games, and they smoked a buttload of weed, and that was about all they did. They had no muscle definition. Like, they were just floppy, useless dudes. Like, we couldn't believe it. We were not suspecting them of murder one bit. We thought they're not capable of murder. Anyway, and that was just our feelings at the time. But we got to the point where we started going, all right, so can you tell me what you were doing around this time and all the rest of it? And we spoke to Darren Halfpenny, and Andy Bedwell was taking a statement off Darren Halfpenny, and we were talking to the others. And then what had happened was Andy came over and he said, boys, listen to this. And we're like, what's going on? And he'd just arrested Darren for murder and put him in the cells, and then come straight over the back because he couldn't stuff around. As he was interviewing and getting a statement from Darren Halfpenny, he basically cracked and said, oh, shit, you've got us. And then he spilled his guts, basically. So Andy had very quickly got his phone out and cautioned him and said, you don't have to talk to me about this. And then he'd gone off and given what's called spontaneous admissions. So he's then said, I did this and this and this. And he said, all right. So he got a very basic first recall off Halfpenny, and then arrested him at that point, and then went, stop, game's on. So from that information, we had now Darren Halfpenny at least in custody. He'd named off other people involved. So as a result, we were now putting together an investigation plan and a plan to arrest the other offenders who he'd named. The other offenders he'd named were Chris Malishko and Zach Greve as being present at the time of the murder. So we formulated plans, found out where they were. I was involved in the arrest team with Zach Greve. I was the arresting member, so I went and arrested him at his home, and there was a recording done. I recorded it all at the time. And at the same time, Chris Malishko was being arrested. So we arrested them simultaneously at their own houses. And yeah, that arrest was all transcribed, obviously, and that transcript is in the book from what I said, what was said back to me. Basically, we'd gone from not knowing what had gone on to very quickly realising that we had these offenders in custody. And then it was just the ongoing investigation to track them back. And as a result, we found it. Malishko was the ringleader, being the son of Bronwyn Buttery. Ray Niceforo had made some terrible threats towards, there's allegations of assaults and things like that against Bronwyn Buttery. Bronwyn was later found to have bankrolled the actual murder that took place. But I remember just a few of the funny. I mean, anyone can read the outcomes of this matter. So it was the homicide of Raffaele Niceforo. You can Google it and find what happened. 2011 in Katherine, October 2011. So the things that would be interesting and the humanising factors from our point of view was these kids were so nonchalant. They had never done anything real in their life, and the way they were speaking to us was like they're in a computer game, they're running through the motions, and what's going to happen is the game's going to end and they're just going to go about their life. They don't realise that, no, champ, you're under arrest for murder. So that was, I can go into how they did it, which was just a bit weird. I'll talk about that in a minute. The more interesting part to us was when Darren Halfpenny was being interviewed by Bedwell and another detective, I can't remember exactly who it was. Watching it back, he was sitting there and goes, so why were you going, tell us what happened, tell it, blah, 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 blah. So tell me why you went to Ray's place. We were there to murder someone. Well, let's sort of carry on. And Okay, so tell me more about that. So he was big, brave. It was like he was playing a role in a movie, and we're all sitting there going, this kid's got no idea. He thinks this is going to come to an end. Anyway, he was pretty arrogant when he walked back down to the watch house, and he goes, "Oh, I need a smoke." And we're like, "No, sorry, mate. People don't smoke in custody, and they don't smoke in prison anymore either. So you can go back in your cell." I'll never forget the next day. I think we did let them have a smoke because they were getting pretty stressed out towards the end. Once they were actually in a cell and they'd heard it clunk, they were getting pretty stressed out. We let him out. Oh, no. We brought him out for some other reason. I can't remember what it was. He goes, "Oh, can I have a smoke now?" And he was crying, and he'd been charged with murder and remanded in custody. And he's going, "Oh, I just want to see people." I said, "No, mate, there's no visits. There's no smoking. There's no nothing. You're in custody. You're in police custody for murder. Do you think this is a joke?" He couldn't comprehend that there were consequences for killing a human. So anyway, yeah, there was that part. But the way that they'd actually done it was that I think they'd come up with some clumsy idea to go to his house and ambush him. And they were armed with weapons that we never located. But we do believe from other investigations that the primary weapon was a very large shifting spanner. So like a really big shifting spanner. So I'm talking, sort of 2 feet long, 24-inch shifting spanner. And what we thought were the bullet holes in the back of his head when Andy had first found the body was actually the threaded piece. When you actually make that shifting spanner smaller, that thread piece extends outside the handle of it, and it's round. And it looks like it's a round thing anyway. So as Milishko has hit him in the back of the head with this thing, it's punctured his skull and gone right through into his skull and not rendered him unconscious. And then what happened was they then also put something around his neck and strangled him as well. So that was how he's died. There was a lot of blood involved. There was a hell of a fight that went on in there with 3 against 1. This is the very quick version, by the way. This was an investigation that took weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. So they, once they had him there, they restrained him with rope. They wrapped him up in a bit of a mat, put him in, I think, Milishko's van, drove him out Gorge Road, and basically dragged him off into the bush and dumped him. So what we did find was we tracked Milishko's movements. We had CCTV footage of him buying things to tie him up, rope and gloves and things like that from the local Woolworths, and we were able to tie him all into that sort of thing. What I found interesting was later down the track, Zach Greve was found to be by the court to be the man who wasn't there. Now, anyway, that's the finding of the court, whatever. My opinion is he bloody well was there. Why would Halfpenny self-incriminate and say, I was here, Chris was there, and Zach was there, and just rattle it off? It was a very natural conversation. If I was being accused of murder, and look, this is not, people have right to silence, no issue, no problem whatsoever. However, if you were accusing me of murder and you said you were involved in this homicide, this is what we believe you did, and I was not there, I'd be singing like a bird to go, I was not there, I did not do this murder, I can provide information, but I did not do that. Zach Greve did not cooperate with that investigation one bit. And he wasn't surprised when we arrested him. So, if you were coming to my house and you were going to arrest me for murder and I hadn't done it, I'd be there going, bullshit, I wasn't there, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't kill anybody. The reaction was not what I would consider human. That's not proof. That's just my feelings. I feel that's just my intuition, I should say, is that he was bloody well there, all right. But anyway, the court found differently. That's purely my opinion, and that's it. But the fact is he wrote a book about it, and he's probably made money off it. And I don't know if he has or not, but yeah. So I that's my opinion on that particular piece of it. What we also found through that was that there was a little bit of notoriety. There's a lot of immaturity amongst these fellas and their social group. There was notoriety around them, and as a result, they were sort of the talk of the town, especially within that group when all these blokes are in custody. And we had a young bloke come up to the station who was in their groups and had nothing to do with this. And he said, I've got information about this. And anyway, he basically started saying, I was a bit involved in the planning. And he was almost incriminating himself because he wanted the notoriety. He was only a kid. He was 18, 19 or something. And we got him in the interview. I remember we were doing a recorded statement with him, myself and Bedwell. And anyway, he's going, the body was found here, wasn't it? I said, I don't know, you tell me. You say you know things about it, you tell me. We're not here to tell you anything about it. He was basically trying to get information out of us about what had happened. And we were there going, mate, we're not telling you shit. You tell us. Like, it's an investigation. This is also not our first rodeo, Chief. Like, you come up here and fuck with the cops, you think. Anyway, at one point I remember he goes, oh, yeah, so I know exactly how to bury a body and get away with it. Oh, yeah, so tell me more about that. He goes, oh, no comment. And we're like, what do you mean no comment, mate? This is a statement. You're not under investigation. You're providing information in relation to it. Anyway, I couldn't handle it anymore. I called him on bullshit because he was saying things that were completely incorrect. And, oh, yeah, I was involved in this and I did that. And you're just trying to be a bit notorious. In the end, we sent him out with his tail between his legs, just going, mate, you are full of shit. And we should probably arrest you for hindering a police investigation by this absolute... Yep. He was a kid just trying to be notorious. But anyway... He worked at a bottle shop in town, and I just happened to drive through about, I don't know, a week later, and I was just buying a carton of beer or whatever, and he wouldn't serve me. Little shit. Yeah, looking at you in a way. When I'm like, righto, champ. And then the other way, what was that about? He goes, nothing. What do you want, mate? Carton of beer. Yeah, no worries. Anyway, the little bugger wouldn't serve me. I thought it was fucking hilarious. Just a small town dope smoking loser who wanted to be notorious with the rest of his mates, who went on to get sentenced to 20 years in prison. So it was interesting, but there was big interest in that. But the thing is, you got to remember the big aha moments were interspersed between lots and lots of extreme hard work and sleep deprivation. And I've said it before on the podcast, a murder investigation, especially in those days, was a competition to see who could stay awake the longest. That's all it was. It was just exhausting. Every line of inquiry is very, very exhausting. If you've got a search warrant, you've got to, right, we've now got information in relation to this. You compile that information, put it through your chain of command. So we'd take it to our sergeant. Our sergeant would go, yep, no problem, that's enough information. Take it through a superintendent, yep, happy days, signed off, apply to the justice of the peace, go off, get the warrant. Mate, we executed heaps of search warrants. I can't remember the numbers, but lots. We had those guys in custody pretty quickly, but the investigation was still ongoing. They were charged with murder on remand, which means that the extreme pressure was off. We had our primary offenders in custody, but that investigation then was continuing and being held more so now by major crime in Darwin, not so much us in Katherine. But we were still very much assisting major crime by carrying out follow-ups and whatnot in town. And as part of that, there was I'm not going to talk about methodology, but there was still a lot of things that went on. It's no secret that there's, surveillance devices are used and things like that. So there was surveillance devices used. There was phone things done. There was lots of things that we were still doing that were very resource intensive, as in human resource intensive. And that went on for weeks, if not months. I wasn't so much involved when Bronwyn Buttery was arrested. So she was arrested later, basically because they tied her in. They had quite a bit of methodology on her, and then she was later arrested and charged. And from memory, she did 8 months. I think she was originally charged with manslaughter, and then I think she was charged with aiding and abetting or something. But yeah, she ended up getting 8 years. I think she served 4 years of 8 years or something. A couple of other points about this. Chris Malishko ended up dying in Darwin, in Holt's prison in Darwin. What had happened was there'd been a scourge of... It was a cannabis replacement. What was the name of that stuff? That was a bit of a scourge.
Chronic.
Chronic. Yeah, there was a bit of a chronic scourge that went through the prisons. It's basically an artificial... I don't know, psychotropic substance that you could smoke. It wasn't illegal, so it was sold as pot puree at sex shops and tobacconists. Anyway, but it had a similar effect on the brain as THC, but apparently he'd been smoking it a lot, and he died, and the coroner's findings were that he died of positional asphyxia. So he was smoking chronic in prison. He'd got it into prison somehow, and basically had passed out so hard on it in such a position that his body couldn't breathe, and he died of positional asphyxia. Darren Halfpenny remains in prison. He's due for parole in 2031. And yeah, he's still in Holt's prison. He made full admissions, cooperated with the investigation, and was obviously found guilty of murder, as all three of them were. and mandatory sentencing in the Northern Territory. Basically, 20 years is the minimum amount of time you'll get for murder. So he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 20 years. Chris Malishko was released in 2013, having served 12 years of a life sentence with a 20-year non-parole, only because the fact that those the findings that Dean Mildren, the justice, had stated that he believed he stated emphatically there was no evidence to suggest he was at the scene. Yeah, okay. He got lucky and there was no DNA that found at the scene, but I believe he was there. That's just my opinion. The court found that he wasn't, so that's the agreed facts on the matter. And yeah, he was basically granted some kind of clemency and released early. Not clemency, but you know what I mean. He was still guilty, but he was released early from his sentence. So the only one who's still in jail for that matter is Darren Halfpenny. And yeah, he's got another 5 years to serve. So that was, mate, that is the quickest version of that homicide ever. But it was really, I had only just been designated a detective in August 2011, and this occurred in October. So, 2 months after I was designated, when the murder first kicked off, myself and Bedwell were the primary investigators. That got taken off us very quickly. Major crime came down probably within a day or two. And they were now leading the investigation, but we were still very much involved. We were still at the forefront, really. And then once the investigation and once the arrest had been made, and we had that initial push was pulled back a bit. We still, like I said earlier, we were ongoing, helping out with errands and all the rest of it, just basically doing follow-ups and carrying out that physical role. But that wasn't the first murder I'd been involved in. I'd been involved in a few for then, but to me that was the closest to the coalface I'd been in a major whodunit murder. And yeah, we had another one that you and I were both involved in the year before. That was a huge whodunit murder, which we probably won't go on about now. But yeah, I know people have been asking, your name's mentioned in that book. It's like, yeah, well, I was heavily involved in that. Certainly at the front end of that job. I know that the investigations went on for months and months and months. And then I also left. So I left Katherine in February 2012 and went to Tennant Creek, and the investigation was still going then. I had nothing to do with Bromlin Battery's side of things because she was arrested, I believe, even after I'd gone to Tennant Creek. So the investigation went on for that long. And to this day, and if you ask Bedwell and anyone who was significantly involved, there are still people who are heavily suspected of being involved, either planning or certainly after the fact removing evidence from places, and that was a focus of an investigation that was ongoing as well. However, to this day, there's not enough evidence to act on that, and there are suspects. There are people who we believe are involved, and they're still out there. So I'm certainly not going to talk about that because that could still be an ongoing investigation. But yeah, a lot of us believe there's more to it than what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, mate. I think, look, just going back on a few points in relation to that, and people, look, if you watch the shows and all that, it seems to happen very quickly. But the amount of groundwork and investigation that goes on behind the scenes, like, when you don't have offenders named, you were talking to everybody, getting information. The amount of information you receive is significant. The thing is also what people need to understand is you need to process that information, and it needs to come to a central point. We've spoken about this, and you call it the octopus. We get the arms going out, they're bringing back the information, the head's processing it, and then the arm gets sent out to go and have a look at something else. But for people, especially people that want to join the police, it's very, very involved. Yeah. You don't sleep. I remember like that one you said earlier. I think we spent about 3 weeks with about 6 hours sleep a night. We worked 18-hour days. It was it was phenomenal. Yeah. But this is the information, and the other important point you made, they're still ongoing. There's still open parts of investigations. The Falconio still has open parts to it that still aren't. I mean, obviously we never found the body. But that's only one of it. I remember speaking to, and we'll give a shout out, Tony Henrys, and rest in peace, mate. But he still was carrying some of that investigation when he was training us.
Yeah.
So these things, and that was what, a good decade later.
Yeah. Yep.
So
There are ongoing lines of inquiry on lots and lots of different homicides. That's why we have cold case units and things like that. And even developments in technology. So there might be some technology that comes along, and as a result, you go, right, well, that might apply to these jobs. So they'll reopen a matter that has been sitting there for 30, 40, 50 years and review all the physical evidence, review all the written evidence, and see what they've got. And if they've got new, so DNA was a big one there. There was lots of pieces of evidence that was still in evidence property offices all around the country, and then this DNA ability came in, and all of a sudden they're getting DNA hits on stuff, and then popping up, and very plausible lines of inquiry coming from that, and potential suspects, and all kinds of things. So the discovery of DNA was massive.
yep,
The technology stuff is now huge. So tracing electronics and data and stuff like that, you can, with the appropriate authorizations, you can go through a lot of information there, and line people up for offences. A lot of these things, we're not talking about a speeding offence here. We're talking about the really high end stuff, the things where it is absolutely worth the police force investing their limited resources in, because of the public interest matter. There's a lot of things that we go, it is not in the public interest to prosecute. I've been involved in a couple of them, but the major one was, a father who'd run over his daughter. It wasn't in the public interest to prosecute. He's run over his daughter. It was complete accident. But the fact is that there's still an offence there. Drive motor vehicle caused death. It was a driver without due care and attention caused death. So there's still an offence there, but he is the family. He's the victim in this. Like, yeah, his daughter's dead, but his 18-month-old daughter is dead, but his life is destroyed. So it's not in the public interest to prosecute. We don't push our limited resources onto something like that. And that's also what's happened on a number of times. But when there is the public interest, that's where the resources really get flooded into it. So, yeah.
Oh, definitely. And sometimes you'll have 20, 30 people working on these cases.
Yeah,
probably even more. And that's only the ones actually going out and getting the information. Then you've got forensics, and you've got crime scene. You've got the bosses looking over it, and then you've got media releases. It is so involved, it is not funny. Mate, I will touch on one thing, because I think Bronwyn actually pushed the battered wife syndrome as a defence.
Yeah, I can't remember. I didn't have much to do with her, so without reading anything, I had very little to do with her. And I went to Tennant Creek and fell straight into the pool again, so I was busy when I got to Tennant and didn't really follow what was going on. Obviously, I was involved in the court matter and all the rest of it, but as far as the ongoing investigation, I was basically off the investigation team, given the fact I'd left the district. So, I had very little to do with Bronwyn Buttery. I had quite a bit to do with the first three, but yeah, very little to do with her.
Yeah. I think, the reason I knew it, my ex-wife now, she was involved in giving evidence in relation to defence, because she'd gone to a number of domestics in relation to the two.
Oh, with them, yeah.
Yeah. So, and look, that investigation, for everybody listening, I won't give the reasons why, but that did change the course of my career still.
Yeah, it did. Sure did. Yeah.
So, that's basically where I went out bush, basically to, stuff that just happened behind the scenes. So, these things will impact people's lives, even if you're not directly involved in it, and especially victims. You got to, remember there's a lot of victims in this. You got to think about the families of the offenders that didn't have any idea that they were involved in this, and it's you've still got to tread very carefully when you do these investigations, because otherwise it gets thrown out and there's no justice served. So I think it's very important to remember that as well. There's a lot of thought, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of debriefs that happen during the investigation. So everybody's, basically on board and getting current information. I know, I'm not really sure on that one, mate, but we used to have daily debriefs in relation to the old street. Was it similar in that one?
Yeah, so I'll talk about this a bit because I was later involved in the management of these big jobs as well. So the biggest thing here is you're coordinating a huge team of investigators. So that's challenging. Trying to keep everybody on the same page, doing what they need to do, and keeping the information flow to the crew. So people will be off, probably working with a partner, doing completely different lines of inquiry in the same job all day. And the only contact they might have with each other is just, oh, what are you up to? Where are you having lunch? Do you want to catch up here? We'll have a coffee, talk about what we're up to. But generally speaking, that investigation team will have, or that pair I should say, they will have their line of inquiry and another crew will have their line of inquiry, and they don't really talk to each other much. So what you've got to do as a sergeant or an office manager is make sure that everyone understands what information is crossing over to other lines of inquiry, and you need to coordinate the effort. So at the end of the day, there's normally a huge debrief of the day, and it'll be like, yep, so Barb and Schultz worked on this one, these guys worked on that. As a result of this, we've now got critical evidence in relation to blah, 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 blah. And then they rattle off all this stuff, and they go, tomorrow morning our intention is to start with this, and our priority will be bang, 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 bang. We'll have search warrants at this location, this location. Information is leading towards the fact that there is probably evidence in relation to this at this location. And it might even be that it's urgent, so you're doing it now. So you might even get recalled, and this happens a bit. I need everyone back at the office now. We've got we've had a critical discovery, and we're going to go off. We've now got a very urgent line of inquiry, and we need numbers. And that normally meant a warrant or an arrest or something similar. So that certainly happened when I happened to be in the office updating a line of inquiry when Andy walked in with that recording going, halfpenny's in the bin, and we've got 2 other suspects we need to arrest right now. So that was a huge turning point. That was right, job's on. We now need to go and lock these guys up straight away. And then obviously briefed that out, planned it, worked out where they're going to be, and hit the houses and went from there. But yeah, that would happen with a warrant for a critical piece of information. It might be that some of this evidence was taken back to this location, and there's people have seen this occur. We've got a statement saying they saw these kinds of items in this house, in this corner of this bedroom in this house. Like, you really narrow down the information. And then it's right. So as a result, we're getting an urgent search warrant right now. We're going to search that premises to get that evidence. And that might happen at 8 o'clock at night when you're all about to knock off, or, you're coming back and you're finishing off your day and you're going to have that debrief. All of a sudden, that critical information will be there. And there's no, I'm sorry, we're just going to let the evidence sit out there where we don't have it for another 6 hours while you guys go and have some sleep. No, sir. No. We're going right now and we're going to do a search warrant there. And I don't care how tired you are. Let's go. So, and then when you do a search warrant, you'll get all that evidence. A search warrant is not kick the door. Yep, found it, boys. Chuck that in the property office. Let's drink beers. No. There's a shit ton of work involved in that warrant. Even just applying for the warrant, getting that process done.
Oh, yeah.
It can be done relatively quickly, but you still need to dot the I's and cross the T's like you wouldn't believe, especially in a homicide. Like, it's the highest level of investigation that police do, is the investigation into the unlawful killing of another human. So,
yep.
And then once you've done the search warrant, you might have urgent lines of inquiry that come from that. And you can't knock off. You can't just go, oh, well, I can deal with that in the morning. No.
Oh.
I think we did one warrant there at about 7 o'clock at night. I think we all knocked off at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And we're back for a 6 a.m. briefing, I might add. So
yeah.
It was 6 a.m. every morning was the briefings. And they were, right, it was basically a situation. It was a SMEAX briefing. So this was the wrap-up of the day before. And the mission basically stayed similar. The general mission stayed similar. Individual operations within that investigation were briefed separately. So if we were executing a search warrant, that was briefed very specifically. But the general daily briefings were a wrap-up of the day before and the intentions of the day coming into it, and then the mission statement, and then the execution phase was basically groupings and tasks. You guys are doing this, you guys are doing that. Bang, 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 bang. That's all dished out. And yeah, the last parts weren't necessarily relevant, but it was as in the going through that SMEAX briefing for any of those people who understand what that is. But that was daily. It was a big group meeting with like 30, 40 people in the room, and all tasked out to go and do your thing. And yeah, then at night it would always be a debrief. And when it settled a bit, it was 6 till 6. We're doing 12-hour days. And at 6 p.m., that was considered the final daily debrief. And it was just a synopsis of the day, what we've been up to, and then what we think we'll be doing tomorrow morning. And then it was a 6 a.m. kickoff in the morning. So huge days, massive information, huge taskings. Nothing's quick.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. I'm getting tired thinking about it. It was hard work. It really was. And then, like I've said before, Shilty, on that other job, you might have a really shit job. You might be reviewing streams and streams and hours of CCTV where nothing is actually occurring. You're just, you're literally being eyes on this shit, and you're going nothing. It's just, so you can get complacent because you're just looking at shit that's irrelevant. But then something critical might pop up, and you've got to be still on the ball enough to go, shit, pause, right, and then you're into it, and then report that because now we've got another line of inquiry. So, yeah, there's a lot to this stuff. It's look, it is interesting. But it's very long, so you lose interest, and then you gain interest. You're always interested, but you get fatigued, and you sort of, man, I need some sleep, and then you come back and get into it again, and it just never ends. So it's
no, mate. And look, mate, I'll just touch on one of the ones like in the old street. One of mine was I did it for about a week, and that was reviewing CCTV footage, like you said, and and these sometimes are 12, 18-hour days. You're doing this. You've got a massive TV. You're reviewing this one. There was, from memory, there was 118 different cameras I had to watch for 48 hours.
Yeah.
So that's a massive amount of information you've got to put in. And then, mate, there was one actually indiscretion that I picked up, and the reason was the timestamp on one of the CCTVs was out by 24 hours.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is I picked that up because you saw GDs come in, and I'm going, hold on, I know that job that when GD showed up at that location, that was the day before.
Yeah.
So why is this timestamp? So then you've got to go in and review that and organise it. It's just, like people, I don't think
too much
people
bloody
can comprehend.
CSI.
Yeah.
Police don't have a big magic computer that taps into everyone's CCTV and just knows everyone's bank account details and bang, bang, bang. There's none of that shit. So basically, the other thing is, there were council-run public street-based CCTV, although it was in its infancy in 2011.
No.
But all of the CCTV was collected from individual businesses. So you've got to either have them cooperate and just give it to you, or you've got to take out a search warrant and seize it if they're not cooperating. Everyone cooperated from memory. I don't remember having to actually execute a warrant to get CCTV. I don't remember that happening. But you've got to go to each person. You've got to cross-check and make sure that all the time data, especially in 2011, where it wasn't that they could have been standalone systems that weren't internet tied or anything like that. So they're not time date stamped with GPS time date stamps. They are just whatever the time is on that particular device is the time date stamp on the actual footage. So all of them were all over the place. It was a fucking nightmare, Shilty.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate. And look, the thing is, you've also got to exhibit all that into exhibits.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure the chain of custody is in there for each exhibit, and when it's taken out and when it's reviewed, and then you've got to do a running sheet on every single one that happened. It's and that was just one person doing this for a week.
I remember, as far as reporting at the end of the day, we'd do a case note entry synopsis of our daily activities that went onto the case of the job. So this is all computer entries at the end. And each individual investigation team would do their daily synopsis. So you'd have your follow-ups, and then underneath your little drop-down folder, you'd have daily synopses, and you'd go through and write your daily synopsis every day. Then the sergeant would go, or someone might be tasked to write the daily running sheet. And that running sheet would be reviewed by everybody, all and sundry, until they were happy with it. And then that would be attached as the daily running sheet for the entire investigation. And then there was an executive summary that would go basically pulled out of that and then sent to the bosses for them to read relatively quickly so they were up to date with what was going on. Because the Assistant Commissioner of Crime would be reporting the progress to the Commissioner. So especially those big jobs, those big what we call tier one bloody investigations, or major crimes. They were declared major crimes. So yeah, they were very, very hot topics. They'd be talked about in Parliament. There might be ministerial inquiries that have to be answered. So all of that information's got to be readily available on the log of the job, so that someone working in the office of the chief of staff of the commissioner can just get into the job and go pluck, and then send that information up to the minister. Mate, she's hard going. There's no chick who's slightly overweight with too much bad makeup on with a magic computer. I give you the drum.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. So, yeah.
No, not at all. Yeah, I mean, we could talk for weeks on these investigations.
Oh, we did.
We did. Yeah, we did. Yeah, literally. I think what you see on CSI is definitely not the job. You don't watch a 45-minute episode, and I think the biggest one I found was Mount Thomas. They used to always have beers at the end of the day. We never even had a chance to have a beer.
No. Well, I used to love Mount Thomas. They get the wildest jobs all day, only on day shift. And then, funnily, no one was working night shift because everyone was at the pub every night. And then every night when everyone's at the pub, if something went wrong in the town, it happened in the front bar in front of all the cops. So the job was right.
Yep.
She's a crazy old show, that one. But yeah, Mount Thomas had a ridiculously high crime rate, and it was pretty convenient to police. More to the point, they wrapped up every single investigation. They might be running 3 different plot lines in that bloody show for an hour. They wrapped it all up within they wrapped the whole lot up by 1 hour's in, including ad breaks. Mate, geez, they were efficient. They were efficient, I'll give them that. Anyway. Oh,
well. Highest crime rate in Australia, that one.
Oh, she's out of control. Make Mount Druitt look like the bloody 5-star resort. Yeah. Oh, that's enough of us banging on, mate. You've given the carton of the week. We don't really have any big source this week. We need to talk to a few more people and get them involved. We've got some really good stuff coming up. A good interview next week. Yeah, we do. And we've got a few irons in the fire. So, yeah, it's all looking positive.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, and the thing is, like it even behind the scenes in the podcast, it takes quite a bit of work. Contacting people, doing your day-to-day life and your jobs and all this sort of stuff. So don't worry, we'll keep on plugging away at it. And yeah, we have actually got some really good stuff coming up in the future. That's for sure. Which I'm really looking forward to. Some great conversations with people. For everybody listening, I'm still working on the Boy in the Water. In the back scenes, talking to people, just getting information, expert opinion in relation to some of the stuff. So yeah, do keep on listening in. When I do have something definitive, I will definitely let it know. And mate, that is one thing. What we spoke about the media, never let it know until you got it confirmed. No. So
don't open your mouth until you know what you're talking about.
That's right.
Don't talk about dead bodies until you confirm that there's a dead. I'll tell you what we found, and it's this. You want to see it? We're not allowed to see it, but it's over there. Like it's there. You can go and touch it. I don't like to talk about things when you can't physically touch them. So yeah.
No, that's exactly right. So and look, some of this takes a long time. You imagine, we did those investigations with 30 people, and it carried on for weeks, and then there's follow-ups after that. I'm doing I'm doing this myself over a year, talking to different people and getting information and all that, whilst doing other jobs, a podcast and everything else. It takes time.
Absolutely.
And you just got to make sure everything's ticked and everything's crossed, all your T's dotted, all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. You got to make sure you get that done, because otherwise, mate, I'd be I wouldn't be much of a police officer. Or detective in that matter.
No.
So, mate, but I reckon that'll just about finish us up. What do you reckon?
That'll do us, mate. Yep, no worries.
Yep. Oh, mate, actually, before we go, I will mention we did have something else to talk about, but as this is getting close to an hour now, we won't talk about it. We from time to time, we do help people in relation to legislation and understanding it, and we've had a couple of really good questions, but we will talk about them on a later date.
Yeah.
I mean, we've spoken a little bit about it, but problem is you got the legislation, then you got case law, and then you got experience in relation to dealing with that legislation. So I think that'll be a conversation for another time, mate. But Other than that, mate, I reckon it's time we sit back and have a beer. What do you reckon?
I hear you. Yep. No, happy days.
All right. Yep. Well, that's the Two Ordinary Cops signing off, and we'll see you all next week.
All the best.